All right, welcome to Just the Facts, our fireside chat series. We're glad to have you guys join in. And I believe, Bob, we have our Facebook Live audience joining us as well. So hi
Very
out there.
nice. Hello, Facebook.
If you're live or watching this recording, that's fantastic. Thanks for being here. Today's discussion is about sales partnership. Now, we know that this could be difficult, a difficult relationship within the dealership, which is why we're going to talk about it before we get to the discussion today, and that would be Q&A. If you've got a question, we want to answer questions. And so if you use our Q&A feature, please ask that question. We'll be monitoring that throughout the chat today. And then we'll ask those, we'll have a few of those questions at the very end. And for those of you that have to go away and leave because you knew this was going to be 25 minutes, just stay on for just a couple questions. But those that want to stick around toward the end and through the end, we have what's called an after party. So our VIP after party will be after the fireside chat. Stick around for that because we'll have a forum where you can ask all kinds of questions, and especially with our expert that is with us today. We won't announce who that is quite yet, but we do have an expert coming. All right. So Bob, as I talked about at the front end here, we have this relationship that sometimes is a little bit challenging within a dealership, and that would be service and sales. You've spent a lot of time in the automotive space. And so can you talk a little bit to that and what that relationship looks like?
Yeah, challenging's being nice to it. It's always been the bridge that's hard to cross, right? Because different reasons, pay plans, personalities. If you took all the salespeople and you put them all in a big room, their personalities would line up, the way they handle business would line up, right? And if you took all the mechanics and all the service, they would have a certain personality, but those two just don't seem to blend very well, right? You couple that with pay plans and other things that drive them apart. It's just always been that bridge that's very hard to cross. But for the dealers that manage to unite those two and make them into a one working machine, the results can be phenomenal. And in today's COVID situation and all the changes going on in the industry, it's becoming more and more and more important to be able to do that. And that's why dealers have reached out to us and asked us for this session, right? They were looking for answers. They're looking for solutions. It's not that they don't know it would be better. It's just that how do you pull that off, right? How do you overcome years of doing it one way or another? And, feelings get hurt and personalities conflict. So we're going to talk about that today. So we're very excited about that one, simply because the dealers have been asking so much for it.
No, that's great. And, when I think about service and sales, I also think about going into a dealership and getting a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
When I have my oil change being done.
Yeah.
Sometimes a donut if they lasted, if I get there early enough. I get a donut, popcorn if not, right? So there's some things there that attract customers for service loyalty. But I noticed something different the last time I got my oil changed. And that was as soon as I put my car, I'd give my keys to the service advisor. About 15 minutes later, I get a video on my phone telling me where they're at in my service. It's like, that is really, really cool. So I guess what I want to talk about is there's so many different ways for customer loyalty and bringing customers back. So what are some of the challenges? What are some of the things that you see that are a benefit? Something like that video.
Yeah, it's a very stressful time. To most people, their car's their baby. People joke around and say, oh, it just gets me to A to B and all. Well, that's not true. Or you wouldn't care what color it was, or you wouldn't care if it was new, or you wouldn't care what tires were on. So it's close to them. So anytime you have to give a stranger your property and you can't watch what they're doing, you're like, what? Especially the longer it takes, right? Like maybe you thought it'd only be 20 minutes or 30 and now it's 45 minutes, or your anxiety starts building up, right? So that video conferencing that you're in reference to really is starting to take hold a little bit to kind of bridge that gap to make the overall experience better, right? And the donuts is funny because it is true that that's a nice gesture and everything, but so many dealers have turned that into trying to sell your car. So he's holding a donut and then says, hey, DJ, you want to come up front and drive a car? And how about buying a car? And you're like, I didn't want to buy a car. I just came here to get my oil changed. And so that can work well, but can also be a derail if you don't do it right, right? But anything you can do to add a little personality to the experience, anything you can do to take the onus off of it, to take the stressful part away from it, that's how you create loyalty. Because once the customer realizes, hey, this was a great experience, and you know what, maybe it costs a little more, maybe it costs a little less, but I'd really rather do it in one place where they know my car the best. So there are certain advantages if you're a dealer, for example, a franchise dealer, to them wanting to bring it back. But there's always the person that says, you know what, they're going to be too expensive and they're going to try and sell me a car and I don't want to buy a car. And so, those are the things that dealers really have to work on. But it's doable and it makes the difference.
So let's kind of talk about that for just a second. That'd be the price. So if I'm a consumer, right, and which I am, and I bring my vehicle in to get whatever service done, like let's just use, Walmart, not to pick on Walmart, but the truth and the reality is if I go to Walmart and I want to do my Christmas shopping, yes, it's almost Christmas. Or let's just go back a couple weeks, Halloween costumes and candy. It's a little bit more convenient for me to shop and get my car serviced at the same time. And it is cheaper. So again, not to knock anybody, but why would I go to a dealership? What are some of the benefits for me to actually go into this? I know I know that's the answer to this question, but I'd like you to answer that question.
You went to Walmart last time.
Walmart's
a partner. We're not going to pay that. But here's the thing. Number one, it may not be less expensive, right? That's a perception. That's what the public believes. Dealers are more expensive. But quite frankly, about, 6, 7, 8 years ago, the dealer started coming out with those lower price oil changes and those lower price things so that consumers would come back to the dealer. But from a consumer's point of view, anytime you can involve the manufacturer or the manufacturer certified mechanics to look at your vehicle, don't forget, there's lots of things that are an advantage. For example, dealers get bulletins, right? They're not the recall, but just a service bulletin. Hey, look at this, check this out. While you got this car, take a look. And those things are inherent to the dealer that, the Walmarts or Jiffy Lubes, other places, which have plenty of reason to go there too, but they lack that, right? So mechanic at a dealership, in most cases, a certified mechanic knows that model better than anybody, right? Knows that product better than anybody. But there's always that communication with the original manufacturer where they talk to their stores and again, keep an eye out for this, let us know this, check this out. And so you always have that. And then the atmosphere is usually a little better, right? Like the waiting room's usually nicer, the ability to walk around. Maybe you do want to look at new cars. Maybe you don't want to be sold one, but you want to at least look at them. New cars are exciting to people, right? So it's the whole atmosphere. It may not be cheaper to do it elsewhere. And the best part, of course, is you're using a certified mechanic who knows that model better than anybody else and would know the internal bulletins or know what to look for, or is used to looking at hundreds of those models. So he knows, hey, this wears out on these. I better look at this for them and that kind of thing. So there's advantages, right? Certainly there's convenience advantages to some other places. Maybe it is quicker. Maybe you can get out in 10 minutes, those kind of things. And you just got to weigh that out as a consumer. At Carfax, we don't say what's good or bad, but we like to look at everything, right? And all the options.
No, that's great. And so just want to ask you a question. I love you, right?
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, I love you. So I think you have a lot of knowledge, but I don't think either one of us are experts when it comes to service and retention and all of that. We have some good stuff, right?
I happen to know that.
Bring somebody in. What do you think?
Yeah, I happen to know someone, and this one's very exciting to me. Dean Estep is well renowned in the industry for his ability in both service and sales, which is why we asked him to join us today. Because the overarching theme of this is the partnership between service and sales. And, there's a lot of experts on sales and there's a lot of experts on service, but it's harder to find one that can walk both ways, right? And can do both the front and back of the house. And Dean is certainly one of those people. So we would like to invite Dean into the conversation. Dean is from Next Level, and we're honored to have you here, Dean. And thank you for joining us today. DJ's excited. He couldn't wait for you to get on, Dean. Hey, Dean, I have a question for you. Carfax has service products and others do as well, as you know. But one of the things we're getting a lot from the dealers is you know what, I'm so backed up now, and my lifts are full. I just really don't even need more customers, right? So there's always that question of volume versus efficiency, and if you can only compete with so much volume, you got to look at those RO tickets, right? And your average RO tickets. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because some of the dealers really get nervous about making consumers mad if they have to wait for weeks to come in for service and that kind of thing.
Well, first of all, Bob, thank you for having me on the call. I have been looking forward to this, and it is a subject near and dear to my heart. I believe that about 10 to 15% of dealers have a seamless connection between service and sales.
Yeah.
The rest function okay, but I'm talking about a seamless connection. It's very unusual. So it is a hot topic and a great opportunity. But before I do that, I really want to push back a little bit on the fact that you called me an expert, Bob. Okay. Do you know what an expert is, Bob?
Well,
first of all, Bob, what's an X?
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, that's a has-been, right?
That's a has-been, yeah.
And Bob, what's a spurt?
I don't even know.
It's a drip under pressure. So you start the meeting off by calling me a has-been, which maybe the age could make you feel that way. I don't know. And a drip under pressure. But with all of that.
It's meant with love, though, Dean. It's meant with love.
Well, there certainly is silos. And getting back to your question on volume and time, certainly time is a hot button today. Customers are demanding an hour or less. And some people are even come back. Some of the latest research I've looked at is more like 40 minutes or less, which is really difficult. And so that combined with communication issues wrapped around it, some folks would say we don't want a lot more volume. Now, you'll not hear technicians say that. It's not because they don't want to do a good job. But you get a main shop technician, he has a choice. He's going to turn 10 hours today, right? He's a good technician, what we call an A-tech, and he's going to turn 10 hours today. You ask him, would you prefer turning 10 hours by working on 20 cars? Or would you prefer to turn 10 hours by working on 5 cars? And I think you would have a pretty simple answer that he's going to be much more engaged in and working on the 5 cars. So first of all, the techs are never going to push back on additional work. The other thing that a lot of folks don't realize is a good technician will find a way to get the work done. From a technician's perspective, you give them good work, they'll find a way to get it done. So sometimes that's just a perception that we have that feeds some of that. But there's a reality to it too. As volume increases, those challenges increase. Today, I was just working on a project called the connected car with one of the manufacturers, and the fact that the car contacts you when it's time for service and so forth. And that technology is getting more and more prevalent today. And when you look at that and you start looking at the potential number of cars that come in, it can seem daunting.
Yeah.
But remember, the majority of those cars drop off the dealer world when they run out of warranty.
No, that's right. That's the fact.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate piece. So here's the connection, I believe. If I sell the car and I service the car, the customer is actually 3 times more likely to purchase from me their next car.
Makes sense.
So if you want to tie service and sales together, you have to come up with a solution to the volume, and there's many solutions. It's a pet peeve of mine. I'm just going to throw this out there, make some of you mad probably, but I always wonder why dealership service departments, I think of a service department as a production plant. Okay. Sure. I'm talking from the drive back. It's a production plant. That's what they do. They produce, much like an assembly plant would produce, if you really think about it. So how many production plants do you know that are closed, when times are good, at least, between the hours of 6 or 7 o'clock until 6 or 7 o'clock the next morning? Great production plants are producing, right?
Right.
And so we can come up with 100, can't find technicians. There's lots of can'ts there, but the opportunity is amazing. And so I think some of that is perception, but there definitely is a silo between service and parts, or service and sales.
And you touched on something that I wanted to ask you about too, and certainly the loyalty aspect is crucial, right? You had mentioned that they're 3 times more likely to come back. And
right.
in today's environment,
my door, please. I'm Brock.
In today's environment, that's more critical than ever. right? To be able to create your own customer base. Much cheaper to keep a customer than try and find a new one. Would you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I think that number is 6 to 7 times, isn't it?
Yeah.
More to get it costs more to get a conquest customer than retain a customer.
100%.
So that's another excellent point, Bob.
Yeah. The that loyalty piece is what the dealers ask us about, right? And how you obtain them and how you handle the customer when they show back up really has a lot to do with it. You know, you can give them that first free oil change and get them back to the dealership, but that's your door. And you either walk through the door, do it right, and invite them to come back and want them to want to come back, or you screw it up. It's kind of a 50-50 shot there, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but yeah, I do agree with that, Bob, but it's deeper than that.
Okay.
I'm going to be very candid and very conventional in my conversation here, so please forgive me. But I will be very frank and tell you, service department people don't trust salespeople.
That's valid.
And I bet you could tell me, because you've had more background in sales and service, had more in service than sales, although we're both intimately familiar with both. But you could easily come back and say, most salespeople really don't have a whole lot of love for the service department.
Yeah, that's a funny thing because the sales think the service rip them off, right? And then the service thinks the salesmen are a bunch of liars and thieves. So it's not a real love situation in most cases, not all of them. But that's the perception. That's
very true. It is.
Can I jump in here on that?
Sure.
So, when we're going in and doing some best practices training with, Carfax and in the dealership, to your point, they talk about maybe having a salesperson, assigned to a service advisor or, things like that when they deliver a car, but I don't really see that happening. So what are some of those roadblocks? So what are some of the things that, I guess my question is why? Why is that the case? Because if it is production and it is, something that's, huge for the business on both sides, then why can't they work together? And what are some of those roadblocks there?
Well, I, a few years ago, decided I needed to grow as a leader. So I became very involved with John Maxwell. He's a renowned leadership expert. And one of the things that John taught me very early as a mentor is that everything rises and falls on leadership. So when you think about that dissonance, where does it begin? If it's true, now you may disagree, but if it's true that everything rises and falls on leadership, then you'd have to go back to the leader. And it's interesting. Now, this is not going to be a popular subject, but I think we have to go back to the root cause, right? In some cases, dealers have told me for years, and I have phenomenal respect for dealers. They're amazing in what they can accomplish, and I'm extremely loyal to them. But they've told me for years that they like a little dissonance between sales and service. They said, you mean what? If you don't believe that, go to the dealers, go and have a meeting with your management team Monday morning and say, guys, no more. We're not going to look at service gross and sales gross, parts gross, collision gross stuff. And I go, we're just going to put it in one big pot and we'll celebrate the success together. Yeah. Well, that would mean that you really, really had a difficult weekend, because that would not, I would never recommend that. And if I ever did, you'd never have me back in your store. But it does in and of itself. There's a little bit, hey, service is doing real well. What's wrong with sales? Oh, sales is doing great. Man, they're selling cars. What's wrong with service? And so there's a little of that tension and good, healthy competition, right? That we kind of like in our business. But if it's taken too far, I think it's one of the contributors to this silo that we're talking about. So when you really, really consider that, it has to start with a concerted effort on the part of leadership, whether that's a general manager in a store, a dealer principal, dealer group. And we'll get into that in a few minutes as some ideas on how you can do that. But I've seen a few cases where we do a good job on that transition. And I'll tell a couple examples where I've watched it launch. But it's a challenge, and it starts at the very top, DJ.
No, that's great. And so, you mentioned you had a few things that you could give as best practices. So I want to give you some time to do that. We Thank you so much for joining us and sponsoring this series or this episode of Just the Facts. But we want to give you a couple minutes to just talk about what it is you do at Next Level and to help that dealership.
Well, I guess I could shift a little bit to what specifically we do at Next Level. But what I'd like to do first is, which would you like me to do first? I'd be happy to talk about Next Level. Always happy to talk about Next Level. I always be indebted to one of my teammates for the title. What a great title for a company that takes people to the next level, right? I'd love to say that I thought of that. I did not think of that. My good friend Greg Manson came up with that title, and I'll always be indebted to him for that. But we can talk about that. But would you like me to give some suggestions on how I've seen this chasm close? Which would you like to do first?
Please do both.
Okay. All right. Let's start with the chasm. We'll take a few minutes and share a little bit about Next Level. I will tell you that years ago, I was a director of training and development for a large publicly held company. And you would recognize, should I just tell them?
Just tell them.
I was the director of training and development and fixed ops for AutoNation for several years. And I'll never forget the day that we were working on this transition from sales to service, right? And there's a guy I worked for that I personally like, still do like him. His name is Mike Maroney, pretty common industry name. And Mike was in the meeting, and we're having this one, a big U-shaped meeting, right? And the CEO was there, and Mike was the CEO at the time. And we're having this big meeting, and all the chefs coming out, right, with these great ideas. And it was a beautiful thing. You know, almost put a tear in my eye for a little bit there. But anyway, we were having the meeting, and Mike's sitting in the center of the U, and we're talking about whose responsibility it is to transition to that first appointment and make sure that, and we were having a great debate between basically, honestly, sales and fixed on whose job it is. And if you guys would do your job. And Mike's just sitting there for a while, and finally he stops everybody. He said, you know, it's an interesting phenomenon. I'll never forget this. He said, I'm a retailer. I would agree with that. He said, I'm a retailer. And he said, if somebody would offer to come to me with a book of business already guaranteed and secured, and offer that to me, I would take that package, cherish it, chew it up, distribute it every way I possibly could, and make everything I could out of that gift. But he said, for the last 45 minutes, we've been arguing over who has to take the package. That's the same sound we had in that room that day, guys. The exact same sound. It's called silence. It's called shock. And so I'll never forget that. And so we took that and we ran with it. And I left AutoNation and really went back into the consulting training world. I have a deep passion for helping people with leadership and development. So I went back into that on a full-time basis. I spent way too much time in meetings. But I took that concept and what we did with a few stores, and it's really worked very, very well. And that is approach this subject from that perspective rather than how do we get service people to take care of a sales customer? Or how do we make the sales department make that first appointment? That's written down somewhere or in a computer somewhere, but the customer has no clue. Happens all the time. I made the first appointment. It's all set. We're good to go. And then the customer gets a phone call. I what? So how do we get that changed? And so what we did is we developed a model where you could approach it. We approached it different ways. One way was we went to 2 or 3 people, service advisors, and we looked for, and you know who they are in your store. We went to service advisors that are in this for a lifetime career, right? Not that advisor that's just trying to find a job until they get a real job, but an advisor that loves the car business and wants to be a professional. And we went to them and we offered them a book of business. And we said, how would you like it if you've been here for 8 years, you've been very successful, but would you like more customers? Oh yeah, I always want more customers. And we literally assigned them customers from sales. And then we trained them and worked with them on how to present to the customer and introduce themselves to the customer. Now, some of you will think this is not very high tech, and you're right. But what they did is they would contact the customer. They would try to call them first, and then they would text or email them at a set path that would process we used. And they would tell the customer, they would introduce themselves and would say something to the effect, you have purchased a very high-tech piece of equipment, and I know you're going to have questions about it as you drive it. Would you allow me to text you my number, and would you save it in your contacts? And I am your go-to guy or gal with any questions, including maintenance on your car. Thank you for purchasing from us. And hey, be sure to call me if you have any questions. There was never a mention. We ensured this. Typically, what's that follow-up call like? Do you have any friends that you could possibly refer to me? I'm going to get a report, and it's going to be, if I don't get 100 on the report, I'm probably going to lose my job. I'm begging you, please give me how about if I give you $10 for gas, 10 gallons of gas, right? None of that. There was none of that. It was strictly welcoming them into the service operation. And we had phenomenal success with that. Now, I'll be honest with you, it's like anything you do, any process, we had to monitor it. But once it got rolling, we didn't have to fight for it because those people started showing up.
That makes
and
a
so
lot.
There are ways to overcome that. I believe there's 5 things that we're certified with Patrick Lencioni, 5 dysfunctions of a team. We're certified facilitators for them. We go around to dealers and other businesses, and we go to places where they have team issues, right? Like we're talking about, and we work with those dealers, and we start with a comprehensive survey, but it's built on the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And we believe there's 5 things that keep your teams from being successful in your store. And see if this makes sense to you. Number 1 is a lack of trust. I said that earlier. Let's be honest. They don't trust each other. To the service department, that sales guy's trying to make them pay for something on the car that they turned down and said they didn't want to fix. So they're trying to whack me. The sales department's over there going, every time service touches a car, it's $2,000 worth of BS. They're whacking me. There's a lack of trust. Number 1. Number 2, you're going to be surprised at this one. There's an absence. Yeah, I meant that word. There's an absence of conflict. An absence of conflict. You say, well, you want conflict? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We want healthy conflict. And what you see in a service and sales operation much of the time is what we call thinly disguised contempt. And it's a tremendous roadblock to success. For a team to be successful, there needs to be commitment. In this case, commitment from service to sales to meet their needs. Not a can't-do mentality, but a can-do mentality. Those of you in sales know that you walk back to service departments. You may not today if you're lucky, but many times over the years, walk back and, hey, I need a favor. And you literally, I've watched this on the service department, service manager's office. As soon as the salesperson says, hey, man, I need a favor, the service manager starts shaking his head no. Now, he doesn't know he's doing that, right? It's called kinesics. He has no clue. He's shaking his head. Yeah, what can I do for you, right? So you get that mindset that there's no real commitment. Accountability on both sides. And then number 5 is results. In a successful team, I am responsible for my own success, but I am not, say Bob's my counterpart in sales. In a successful, cohesive team, I am not successful if Bob is not successful.
Exactly.
The success of Bob and I is more important. I didn't say this would be easy, but leadership is, I love when people say, that's soft skills. Yeah, just try to do it. Tell me how soft it is, okay? You aren't doing it. That's why it's not. That's why it's soft. If you ever try to do it, it's very, very hard, extremely hard. But you can do that. If you get to that point where Bob's success is as important as mine, you have an amazing team. And so how do we fix that? We trust one another. We engage in conflict around ideas. We commit to decisions that we want to make. We hold one another accountable. Hey, Bob, you said that you were going to bring a service advisor to your sales meetings to explain our family plan to the salespeople, and you haven't invited them for the last 4 meetings. You said that was a commitment you're going to make. What's going on, man? As an example. And then we focus on collective results. So I wanted to do that first because I think That is much more important, DJ and Bob, than who Next Level is. And when we see that getting fixed, we see amazing. The numbers come right behind it. The numbers come right behind. All of a sudden, you're getting referrals. You got a good referral program for your service advisors, an honest and a real one. You have a good employee purchase program. If you're working as a team, how come your employees are pulling into your store with your competitor's tag on their car? That's not a good team. So that's not mutual accountability, is it?
No.
So those things are the kind of things that I think we can work on to be successful. And real quick, there's one other thought. I have it with me. I use it. We're doing a very extensive leadership development program for fixed operations people with one of the large publics. I'll say it again, Asbury. But one thing we're doing is this. We're teaching this concept right here. We're teaching people, and how much have you invested, and how much have you been taught? If you're a manager, we're teaching people to lead down. That's simple, right? We all work on leading down. We also teach people to lead up. Sometimes that's a challenge in service and parts.
Yeah.
You get in front of the GM and it's like, I'm not with that GM 7 hours a day. I don't understand the chemistry, right? And so we teach them how to lead up. And most importantly, guys, we teach them how to lead across. And that's exactly the subject that you're trying to address today. And I'm impressed that you're attacking it, because it's probably one of the most difficult internal challenges within a dealership.
It makes a lot of sense, and that's why dealers are asking for help with it. It is a big challenge. Hey, DJ, I think we have to end the first session here and open up the party, right?
We do, and Dean, thank you so much. And you accomplished something that no other one of our guests has accomplished. You had Bob and I shut up for like 7 minutes. So, good job. Fantastic.
Well, let me just say, Bob, this guy's real quick. NextLevelAutogroup.com. That's who we are. And this is what we specialize in. We also have a whole repertoire of advisor and manager training, but we're leadership fanatics because everything rises and falls on leadership. So check us out, nextlevelautogroup.com.
Awesome. So we are going to cut it short. We didn't have any questions come in through the Q&A feature. So we are going to go into our after party. But before we do that, so please stick around. We want to thank Dean. Thank you so much for joining us. He will also join us in the after party where you can ask questions if you have them, and we could just have an open discussion between the three of us and hopefully some more people that are on the line as well. And thank you guys for attending and taking the time to attend today. I know you're busy. I know those schedules get really, really busy, but thanks for taking that time. And if you're watching this recording, thank you for watching the recording and Facebook Live. I see you on there. I know you're there. So it's good to have you on Facebook Live today as well. So if you need to get a hold of us for any reason, you can reach Bob or I at justthefacts@carfax.com. That's FAX, justthefacts at carfax.com. Or Dean, can I give your personal email address?
Yes, sir. You sure may.
It's Dean at nextlevelautomotive.com or
Next Level Auto Group.
Dean at
nextlevelAutogroup.com.
Next Level Auto Group. There we go. So Next Level Auto Group. So I shouldn't have done that. So good thing you're there. All right. So thank you so much again for attending.